Welcome, I'm Rabbi Phil Bressler of Beit Am in Corvallis, Oregon, and this is the daily summary video for the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch Yomi Daily Halacha Learning Project, covering the passage from Siman 104 Seif 7 to Siman 104 Seif 21. You can find links to the Hebrew and English text of this passage and to the calendar of upcoming passages in this video's description. Continue our discussion of Chol HaMoed, the intermediate days of the extended festivals of Pesach and Sukkot. We introduced the concept of milachot yesterday. Now, milacha is often translated as work, as in you should do no work on Shabbat or holidays, but it's not work in any sort of contemporary or physics sense. Milachot are 39 specific labors that are prohibited on Shabbat and Yom Tov. Now, the Kitzur assumes you already know the basics, and we'll actually make the same assumption later on in Siman 80 when we talk about Milachot on Shabbat. So a comprehensive introduction to these, however, is beyond the scope of really what I can do in a short YouTube video. So I'm going to include a link in the description for an outline of 39 Melachot with definitions and examples, and credit to Rabbi Gavriel Bellino of the 6th Street Community Synagogue for that. For a more full explanation of the concept of Melacha itself, I really recommend this book that was my guide in rabbinical school. It's called The Sabbath by Dayan Dr. Isidore Grunfeld. It's about $10 to $15 from your local bookseller. Now, having at least some passing familiarity is important because what the Kitzur will discuss with regard to Yom Tov are exceptions. Remember, you can do some melachot on Yom Tov for things like food preparation and to avoid substantial loss that would otherwise be prohibited on Shabbat. And it'll also want to discuss some activities you might have thought would be exceptions. So go ahead and get a little bit familiar with the basics. Come back and we'll jump right in here. No fertilizing your fields, even indirectly through an animal or non-Jewish agent. That's because this would be a toledah, that's a derivative labor within the category of plowing. No planting on Chol HaMoed except for seeds that will spoil if they don't get soaked in water. This is a loss prevention thing. No plucking or cutting off growing fruit unless it's going to spoil before the end of Yom Tov. This is another loss prevention thing. Or if you're going to eat it that same day, in which case now it's a food preparation thing. Cutting wood is okay if you're going to use it for heating on the festival. You're going to use it for your own needs. But don't cut wood for longer term needs, like to store up for future use or to prepare a field for plowing, things like that. The Mishnah Berurah clarifies here that your intent has to be for something permissible. Your intent in doing a malacha on Chol HaMoed has to be for something permissible, and your intent has to be obvious. You got to think about what you're doing, what it looks like from an outside perspective, and remember not to give the wrong impression. Gathering fruit is okay if it's going to spoil, or if a non-Jewish neighbor is going to get to the garden first and cause you to take a loss, if you're not going to collect enough fruit. Further, it's okay to go beyond just gathering up fruit, like pressing grapes, for example, to make wine. If not doing so promptly is going to incur a loss. Don't shave or get a haircut or cut your nails on Chol HaMoed. Remember, you're supposed to do that on Erev Yom Tov so that you can enter into the festival looking nice. The exception is if you were constrained from cleaning up somehow. The example here is that you were in jail and only got released during Chol HaMoed, in which case you're allowed to get cleaned up. Don't do laundry. I cannot stress this enough. This is the number one thing that to me feels like the least festive thing in the world that you could possibly do on Shabbat or Yom Tov. Don't do laundry. Unless you had no chance to wash your stuff before Yom Tov, or it got dirty on Yom Tov and you have nothing else to wear. Cloth diapers for babies are an exception for this. They don't stop urinating for Chol HaMoed. They don't understand. Health is a top priority. Do what you need to do to keep you and your family and your animals healthy. Recording bills and records of sales and things like that is okay. It involves writing, which normally would be prohibited. But I think the assumption here is that it'll help prevent a loss if you don't write it down. Interestingly, writing for fun, like social letters to one another, might be okay because it makes people happy on Yom Tov, and that's what you're supposed to do, is enjoy the day. The Kitzur recommends doing it with a shinui, that's a twist, doing it in a different style somehow, with your offhand or a different style of lettering. Basically, to telegraph to anyone who might be seeing you do that, that you're not just thumbing your nose at the prohibition. No weddings should be held on Chol HaMoed. This sounds like a burden, but I think it's actually a good idea. It's not a need per se. You don't have to schedule the wedding during Chol HaMoed. And each kind of rejoicing really deserves its own dedicated celebration. Chol HaMoed should be celebrated on its own terms, and the wedding should have its own space to be celebrated separately. Feasts, though, for things like a Brit Milah, a circumcision, or Pidyon Haben, that's redemption of a firstborn child, those are permitted. Remember, you can't control when that's going to happen. You can't control when the birth is going to happen. 8 days after a birth may fall during Chol HaMoed, and so that's okay. Feasts for engagements are also okay. I guess you can't control them either. I guess they can be sometimes spontaneous. Also, it's okay to go beyond the tichum, that is the Shabbat boundary on Yom Tov. The Shabbat boundary, the tichum, is 1,000 amot in any direction. Imagine yourself at the center of a circle. Wherever you are when Shabbat begins, that's the radius you can travel within on Shabbat. However, the Kitzur says that vehicles are permitted on Yom Tov, which it seems unlikely to me. Kitzur in the mid-19th century is imagining cars, maybe more likely carts or perhaps bicycles. You can also repair your vehicles on Yom Tov for travel, something normally that would be prohibited on Shabbat. Apparently, outings are on holidays are considered a need, and that's worth doing to be able to enjoy the holiday. Finally, don't mate your animals together. There's no loss prevention there. It could just wait. And don't set a chicken on eggs to hatch them unless you're putting her back from where you had set her before the holiday. Maybe it's not a loss issue because you could just go ahead and eat those eggs. In any case, that's all for today. As always, our learning is dedicated to Rabbi Shlomo Gansfried, the author of the Kitzur, and the historic Jewish community of Uzhhorod, Ukraine. See you tomorrow.